Hi and welcome to another tutorial video. This time I'm going to show you how to do page layouts using grids, guides and rulers in Photoshop. So in order to do that we're going to need to create a new file for us to work on. So when you're working on your magazine or your print media product, you're always going to want to come in here and make sure you choose a print preset, and we're going to be working on an A4 because it's a single magazine page. We're in portrait format, which means it's upright. And we're making sure that we're working at 300 pixels per inch. So we've got a nice resolution, so when we print it out, it won't look all blocky and pixelated. We hit create, and we're away. You'll remember from previous videos that all of your layers and your adjustments and properties are on the right-hand side here, and all your tools sit on the left-hand side here. But what you might not have noticed is the ruler that's along the top and along the side. If your ruler isn't there, all you need to do is go into View and choose Rulers. Your shortcut for that is Control R. I generally leave my rulers on because what happens is when I zoom in, so remember we can hold down Alt and use the scroll wheel to zoom in. When you zoom in, you can get a little bit lost on a white page, and so having the ruler on the top does kind of give you some coordinates as to where you are, because holding space we can drag the canvas. You'll notice that 0, 0 is the top left corner. So when I am somewhere in the middle of the document, I know roughly how far to the right and how far down I am. So it's a really handy thing to leave on even when you're not working with guides. So Control 0 zooms us all the way out, and I'm going to show you how to set up your rulers and your guides using a grid. So where is the grid? Well, actually it's in the same menu. In View, we need to go into Show and down to Grid. That is Control apostrophe, which is to the left of the Enter key. And when we turn that on, you'll see a grid appears on my screen. Now that won't print out in the final print, it's just a guideline for you, but you might want to turn that on and off as you're working because it can get a little bit busy and it can interfere with some of the things that you're seeing. So just don't forget that Control apostrophe will turn that on and off really quickly and easily for you. So what we want to do now is use these subdivisions to lay out our page. Now, if your subdivisions don't look like mine, it's possibly because you haven't set yours up properly yet. Easiest way of doing that is in the Edit menu and go down to Preferences, and over here you've got, oh, it disappeared. Over here you've got Guides, Grid and Slices. Don't worry about slices, but we certainly want to be changing our guides and grid information. And the key information here is your grid line every 5 centimeters. So that means that I have a big thick line every 5 centimeters. And I've divided that into 10 subdivisions. So that's where these faint lines go. If I change my grid line to every 10 centimeters, you'll see how now I only have 2 on the width of this 21 centimeter page. And my subdivisions get much, much bigger. So remember, these subdivisions are just helping you with your layout. They're nowhere near as accurate as using the ruler. So I put my grid lines every 5 centimeters, subdivisions 10, and that gives me a relatively accurate grid, which isn't going to cause too much moire or sort of buzzing on my eyes as I'm looking at it. The thing to remember when you print out from a computer is that you don't see everything to the edge of the page. There is kind of an area around the edge of a page when you print out where the nozzle just won't spray the ink. So whenever you're doing a design, it's always best to do your pictures and images and graphics all the way up to the edge of your page, but make sure that you don't put your text all the way to the edge of the page. So to remind us to not go too close to the edge and risk cutting off letters or bits of our masthead and things like that, all you need to do is making sure you're on the Move tool, click and hold on the ruler and pull down. And you'll get this blue line that you can then move around to put it wherever you want. And you'll see I've put it 1 grid spacing inside the edge of the page. I'll do that again on the right hand side, and I'll do that again on the left hand side. So now you can see I've got a nice even grid. However, if we look down at the bottom, what you'll notice is that I don't have an even number of squares. Now I could just drag this down from the, undock that. I could just drag down from the top and place it on this line and it would be absolutely fine, except it's not exactly square. So one of the things you can do is when you come into here, you can actually turn what's called snap off. That means instead of it snapping to the grid lines, you can put it somewhere in the middle of the grid lines, and mine would be there. But I recommend that you leave snap on as much as you can because it helps to make everything snap to that grid and line up. Well, why do we want everything snapping to a grid? Well, the thing to remember is that in magazine design, most of the designs conform to some sort of grid. So here you can see we've got a nice square box, we've got even columns, and it doesn't matter how complex the page gets, it tends to fall into a grid shape. So before I turn off these grid guidelines, I'm going to set up some more of my guides by clicking and holding on the ruler and pulling down. And I'm going to have my headline across the top here somewhere. And I'm also going to want to add the space for the columns. The key thing about columns is that they need to be even. If you have all your columns different thicknesses, it's going to start looking really, really bad really quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, well, one of my big squares should be a nice thin column on the right hand side there. Then I'm going to leave what's called an alleyway in between them. And then I'm going to have another one square wide column here. Now, I would carry on to the left of the page. However, in this example, I'm only going to have a couple of columns on here. So actually, that's all I need to do. I have created a new document. I've turned on the grid. I've set those grid subdivisions. I've turned on my rulers. And I've used the grid to help me put my guides from the rulers in exactly the right place. So now I want you to have a go at doing that. And don't forget, Control apostrophe turns that grid off, and Control semicolon will actually turn your guides on and off as well. Don't forget, your grids and your guides will not show up when you finally print your product out. So you can use as many of them as you want and then just turn them off when you're finished. So have a go at doing that yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.